All right, people, listen up. Thought I would try something like the Informer. Something dumb. Anyways, I'm gonna make this little video today about rights and get a better definition of what those are for us when we're talking about rights. You know, all kinds of ideas about rights out there people have. One big primary misconception people have constitutional rights. When I'm always claiming my constitutional rights. Well, first of all, you don't have any constitutional rights. The Constitution doesn't confer or delegate, provide, give. It's not a source of rights of any kind. What it does is it outlines the limits of power on government, how it's supposed to organize, operate, what it can and cannot do. And part of that is supposed to be protecting your naturally occurring rights. Some famous words in that one document everybody always likes to quote. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Now, you notice I mentioned it as unalienable because that's really what it is. That's how it's really pronounced. But unalienable, we'll talk about that in just a second. I think it'll be one of my other previous videos about unalienable, unalienable, definition of words. We're going to get into that later. Very, very important. But let's talk about just a general idea of rights, what people think they are, their legal, social, ethical principles, freedom, entitlement, ability to do something. Sort of the fundamental rules, normal rules of society, what people think or allow, okay, and then they sometimes codified those in different social mores, different social groups, different places around the planet in different time periods. Certain things that are probably not okay today were okay and very prevalent, like dueling. You know, there's even today, though, you can still, if you look at the state of Utah, when you're taking a concealed carry class, we'll talk about some of the laws there. And if you and I agree that we're going to do combat and I kill you, I can't be charged. We can't be charged, held accountable for a combat that's been agreed to in a civil, a contest of some kind. So rights have changed an awful lot over time. They're very subjective, can be. And so that's why we're talking about rights. I'm going to get here in just a second about the importance of doing the things that we're doing, and we're referencing constitutional law at all times. The things that we're standing upon, the arguments that we make, we can take them back to establish a position coming out of the book Law of Nations or your Constitution for the United States of America or the Articles of Confederation or the Declaration of Independence, because they're all founding documents. They're all very legitimate, but the one we primarily rely upon is the Law of Nations. You know, we'll talk about these things: this life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, the unalienable, which means you can't be separated from it. What that really means. So, we're talking about that. We look at the root of that word. It's Latin, alien, or alienus, meaning of or belonging to another. You know, you provide that with a prefix of un, and I've done this one before. Un means not or non. Unavailable, non-available. Unwanted, not wanted. So people understand what un means generally. And able is the idea of capability or capacity, something you're able to do. So the word then pretty much breaks down to be not able to be denied. Okay. Now they always say not to be able to separate because that kind of keeps people, a little bit confused, but not to be denied. And if we look at the other pronunciation, the exact same spelling of that word, which is unalienable. Now, alien in legal terminology is a charge to claim placed against someone else's property uh, for as a condition to perform a duty. Now, we've been talking about duties and obligations quite heavily throughout this whole process. We're talking about a little bit today too about rights, because your rights come from your obligations. And the duty is the activity that you undertake to fulfill your obligations. So rights are nothing more than an ability to do something based on an obligation or a duty, a performance of some kind that you do for another person or another entity. And part of that also is your naturally occurring rights, which also can't be taken away from you, can't be charged. Let's get back to this word alien, okay? Not being able to be charged. You can't be taxed for living, can you? Your liberty, and liberty is not what people think it is. Liberty is the ability to move around, locomotion, change of space, moving from one place to another. Okay, abilities to physically engage in any kind of activity. That's a liberty. Liberty and freedom are always confused. They interchange them to confuse you, because freedom and liberty are two entirely different concepts, two entirely different activities, two entirely different words. The meanings are worlds apart. Okay, so liberty is your ability to move around. Okay, and of course the pursuit of happiness. Well, that's very subjective also, but you look carefully. They talk about pursuit of happiness, not pursuit of property, because happiness, what's talked about in this book, Law of Nations, also working towards your perfection. In fact, once you become a member of the collective group, delegate a little bit of your authority over to another organization, the government, the sovereignty, to act on your behalf in certain matters. The only duties you have left to yourself are your self-preservation and working towards your own perfection. Do all the duties you owe to yourself. Now, from that duty, that obligation of self-preservation, that obligation to make yourself better, because when you're better, isn't your society better supposed to be? And simply certain rights and things come along. Right to be happy, right to have a life, right to be able to move around freely without being interrogated every stoplight. Okay, so I kind of got off track there. But let's get back on the word lien for just a second, because it's also Latin. In fact, most of the English language comes from Latin originally. It's liere, which means to bind. Okay, so binding or tying up, putting a charge on, uh, diminishing. So that's why I use the word unalienable, because it's much more specific to what it is that I believe is a true concept, the true idea of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, United States of America, all that stuff. Right? Can't put a charge on those things. You can't tax me for living. Can't tax me for working. Can't tax me for moving around. Right? To do all the time. But we're talking about that. So, anyways, what's the constitutional definition of rights? Now, I think in order to understand that, we have to take a closer look again for just a minute about, let's say, what's really meant by nation or a state. Nation, United States of America is a nation. Utah is a state. Okay? And it's absolutely critical in order to really be able to work through these understandings and be able to take a solid position and understand really who you are, what your lawful position really is in relationship to other members of society, in relationship to your governance, to recognize that there's no such thing as government. The only people constitutional definition of a nation state is societies of men united together for the purpose of promoting the mutual safety and advantage by the joint efforts of their combined strength. And such a grouping is such a society. They've got their interests, they deliberate, they take resolutions in common, they become a moral person. And they're susceptible to obligations and rights. Now, I know I defined the word susceptible in one of my other previous videos, but sus means up, take up, and susceptible means open to, or susceptible means that. So take up into the body. Okay, so the body becomes obligation, it has obligations and rights. Rights flow from obligations, don't they? Their right to govern comes from their obligation they owe to the consent, the delegation of authority that's come from the governed. It's not what it says. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Okay? Now, the law of nations really helps us to establish a better idea of what the solid foundation regarding obligations and rights of nations are. Since there's no such thing as a government, no such thing as a nation, it's just a people. This helps us to establish a solid foundation for the obligations and rights that we have as people interacting with one another. The law of nations, this is constitutional law too, it's right in this book, is the science, a science, which teaches the rights subsisting between nations or states and the obligations correspondent to those rights. Now, of course, I can't go act as the ambassador for the United States of America without having been properly delegated that authority, that position. But I'm still a member of the society, and those that are in that position, that ambassador, he has obligations and duties that he owes to me, an individual, in that society. Just because he's been assigned to or delegated some authority, given the title to be an ambassador, he doesn't cease to be a man, does he? Still walks around, gets up in the morning, does everything that you and I do. He's still a man, a living human person walking around. He's a people still. Okay? He just happened to have some ability to go do some certain things that I can't do on my own. I don't want to do, not qualified perhaps, maybe, all kinds of reasons. Okay? He doesn't cease being a man. He's not exonerated from his other duties and obligations of being that. Now, constitutional law, the book Law of Nations, okay? An individual is bound by the law of nature, means indispensable, can't get out of it. You have to be bound to deal honorably and truly with other individuals, whether the precise acts required of him be or be not such as their own municipal law will enforce. Okay? Your elected officials, your unelected officials don't have any permission, don't have any right, don't have any ability to lie to you or me about anything, certainly not to be dishonest about the accounting practices that they have. Okay? Their rights and benefits that they derive from being a part of the governance, in the sovereignty, acting as sovereigns, exercising your sovereign authority, they have duties and obligations. And one of those is that they are bound by nature to deal honorably and truly. That's an obligation that they're bound to, and their rights of governance flow from that. Now, very important to have to keep understanding that. They're just people. They don't get any special, they don't have the ability to do most of the things that they are doing, that they have misrepresented to everybody over time that they're capable of doing. You know, Seems how the law of nations is a science, exacting. Isn't that what science is, pretty much? Its definition of rights here, this is a constitutional definition of rights. The right being nothing more than the power of doing what is morally possible. That is to say, what is proper and consistent with duty. It is evident that right is derived from duty or passive obligation. Now, passive means there's no real effort at it. It just happens. Passive income, right? Is usually one most people know about. Passive, okay? Doesn't require your effort. It just happens. So a passive obligation, it just happens. It's an indispensable obligation. The obligations we lie under to act in such and such a manner would be a passive obligation, okay? So it's therefore necessary that a nation should acquire knowledge of the obligations incumbent upon her, in order that she may not only avoid all violation of her duty, but also be able distinctly to ascertain her rights, or what she may lawfully require from other nations. Now, if the nation's just made up of people, doesn't that mean that you and I have the same incumbent obligation to acquire the knowledge of what those obligations are? Acquire knowledge so that we don't we avoid all violation of our duties. And by understanding our obligations, our duties, then we are able to distinctly ascertain our rights and what we may lawfully require from other individuals, elected or not. Okay? Now, let's talk about this word morally for just a second. Most people talk about moral, morality, being virtuous, being religious perhaps, righteous, ethical, moral. Those are all adjectives go along with that word of morally. Okay, we're talking about what? The rights being nothing more than the power of doing what is morally possible. So moral sense dictates a clear-cut preference for these societies which share with us an abiding respect for individual human rights. That was a quotation by Jimmy Carter. Ethical stresses idealistic standards of right and wrong. Ours is a world of nuclear giants and ethical infants. Omar Bradley, famous general. The synonym virtuous implies moral excellence, loftiness of character. The life of a nation is secure only while the nation is honest, truthful, and virtuous. Frederick Douglass. And the word righteous emphasizes moral uprightness when it's applied to actions, reactions, your impulses. A lot of times, what they have the term justifiable outrage. Right? Sandra P. Thomas stated it was righteous anger that motivated letters written by whistle-blowing employees. So, taking again from this book, Law of Nations, Constitutional Law, right here, as men are subject to the laws of nature, and as their union in civil society cannot have exempted them from the obligation to observe those laws, since by that union they do not cease to be men, the entire nation, you, me, everybody, okay, whose common wills but the result of the united wills of the citizens, remains subject to the laws of nature and is bound to respect them in all their proceedings. And since rights arise from obligations, as we have just observed, the nation, you and me, individuals, possess also the same rights which nature has conferred upon men in order to enable them to perform their duties. The nation states, you and I. We delegate some authority, go through the little electoral process, the voting, all that stuff that happens. Those individuals then are delegated a little bit of authority, right, to do certain things on our behalf. Lying to us isn't one of those. Stealing from us isn't one of those. Okay? Engaging in their own activities for their own benefit or for the benefit of a small group to the disadvantage of the majority, which is what they have done, under the guise of national security, uh, emergency, war. Which is fine if those were honest things happening. But the fact of the matter is, people, it's provable beyond doubt. Those leaders, all pretty much every nation, they all get together. They are involved in all these things. They've lied about a great number of things here in the United States of America, specifically what happened on 9/11, 2001. Okay? Was no airplane, no commercial jet airliner crashed into that building, that Pentagon. Not a single shred of evidence. So how is it then, if these individuals are bound by the law of nature to deal honorably and truly with the other individuals, in fact, they should be held to a higher standard because they've been delegated some authority to act on behalf, and I believe that they are, when in fact they are not. It doesn't really matter whether their acts required of them are uh, unlawful or not by their municipal law, which they are too. Okay, all kinds of things, seditious, conspiracy, uh, overthrow the government, all those things that those guys are violating in Title 18. Okay? Section 32, 32, 23, all those things there. Okay. I've gotten off track here. It's very important to understand. Okay, rights, nothing more than what is morally possible, it's physically possible, and derived from obligations and duties that you have. Now, my next little video, I'll talk about perfect rights and just regular rights and the difference between those. The perfect right gives me an absolute right to command, to demand, to compel performance. And that's what they always claim they have when they write their laws. They can compel you to obey. You don't want to obey, that's fine. You don't have to. But we can compel you, force you to, under threat of force or penalty. And then if you decide not to, you suffer that penalty or suffer that force being brought upon you. Works both ways, people. Okay? They're still subject to all the same laws that we are. It's impossible for them to circumvent the very document that's created, number one, that governmental organization, and for them to take the authority that's been delegated to them for specific purposes and then claim that they've taken my authority but then acting against me. Not possible. Now, it is possible because it's criminal, because it is unconstitutional, it's unlawful, it's unconscionable. And what's even more unconscionable is the fact that as a society, we have stood by and allowed this to go on and on and on. So it's time for people to get organized, time for people to get educated, time for us to start getting organized and taking appropriate actions, take back control of our governance. You, me, your families, your loved ones, even people you don't know. Right? You have a duty to all of them, all of us, me, and I have the same duties to you, to defend, uphold, protect that Constitution, that society, that governance that was instituted. Those powers derived, just powers derived from the authority, the consent of the governed. Okay? That oath that your law enforcement takes, your governor takes, your legislators take, your president of the United States of America takes. To uphold, defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Okay? Now we're going to talk later too about what happens, what's stated here in the Constitution, what happens when they attack the Constitution, how they lose the authority of the people. They don't have that any longer. They don't have immunity. They don't have the cover of your office. And I'm pretty sure that these egregious violations of the Fourth Amendment, this massive spying, this unlawful legislation that's been forced, direct attack on that Constitution. those individuals in power don't have any authority. And I say that since 2001. Members of governance, the sovereignty, sovereigns at any level, local law enforcement, city council, county commissioner, mayor, governor, state legislators, federal legislators, anyone, federal agencies, that haven't spoke out about the atrocious lie, 9/11, airplanes smashing the Pentagon building. There's not one single shred of evidence. And haven't called for, haven't demanded, haven't forced a real investigation. I say you have no constitutional authority to do anything to me or anyone else. Now, does that give me the right to violate? No, it does not. But certainly doesn't give you authority to continue to violate, to continue to steal, take from me the things I can't be deprived of, my life, my liberty, my pursuit of happiness, denying me things, access to medicines. Now, time, people, to grow up, time to read your documents, time to get educated. I know I don't make any friends on these things. Nobody even watches this, but it's the most important information you've ever been shared with. And I quite understand why people can't grasp it. So, as I said, I'm not a very good teacher of these things. I'm hoping when it gets written in the book form. But no, it's time, people. Time to get real information, okay? Real authority. You don't think they know these things. You don't think they know every word in this book. Huh? You wonder why when I write letters, when I go have conversations with certain governmental officials, guess what? They at least consider what I'm saying. When I use certain things, certain phrases, okay? This is everything, people. It is your Constitution. It is the only way that you're going to be able to save your country, the United States of America, or anywhere else on this planet. This is bigger than just saving and taking back your government so you can have more happiness. I don't know, perhaps maybe you should stop and think about the duty you might have to the rest of the species on this planet. Unfortunately, there's been millions of them completely eradicated, exterminated, extinct, that we can't bring back. I'm pretty sure that we should probably see what we could do about the others that are still here, because as far as I know, what I've been told, there's no life forms anywhere else that we can ascertain anywhere, even with our greatest technology, these space-based telescopic platforms. Pretty sure that there probably is life out there. We've been being lied to about that, but the fact of the matter is the official story is there isn't. So pretty sure we have a pretty high level of obligation to make sure that we continue to allow these other species to thrive. Okay? So I'll get off my little soapbox, my rant now. Love everybody. I'll try to remake a few more of these. Hopefully the book's going to be better. But anyways, okay. I'll talk to you guys later. And please keep watching. Please take this serious. Okay, this is not just me making this stuff up. I'm taking this right out of the book, Law of Nations, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 10. And believe me, your elected officials, your unelected officials, they know. And we're going to be able to take this stuff, combine it with some other legislative acts, some other contract law issues. We can build ourselves pretty solid positions to operate from, to do anything we need to do. Take care of our families, our kids. Use substances that we've been denied. Okay? Take appropriate action to get these criminals, they're running this planet, arrested, put on trial for treason. That's what has to happen, people. That's what has to happen. Okay? All right. Love you.